This is the last video on the create table statement. What I want to talk about this time is a data type I have not mentioned before, and it's called an enum. And what you do is you put the word enum and then you define a list of valid values that you want in that column. And if a user, when trying to do an insert, uses a value other than what's here, you'll get an error message. Okay, so I've added a new column called the title. And we're going to put the Mr., Mrs., Miss, whatever in front of people's names. Right now I've made it, it's a nullable field, right? This is commented out. I'll show you it has some interesting characteristics when you make it not null. So let's go ahead and create this table, run it. Whoops, I have an error someplace. Oh, I don't have a comma at the end of this column. There we go, because I did that comment. So now we'll try and create the table. There we go. When I go to insert an employee, let's say instead of hitting MR, I put in MT, so I have a typo. So when I hit go, I'll get an error message, data truncated for the column. That record did not go into the table. If I change it to one of the valid values and run it again, it should run just fine. So now when I hit it, and I'll select, there's John in the system. Okay. Now, when I mentioned it has some interesting things when you do a not null on an enum. I'll put a comma after this. Okay. I'll drop my table and recreate it. Oops, something happened. Oh yeah, I want to comment this out for a second. There we go. Okay, now let's recreate the table. And here we go. So it's not null, it's a required field. Well, down here in this statement, I don't list it. Okay, what it's going to do is it makes the first value in the list its default value without using the word default. It's just going to say, well, it's not null. I guess they're just going to want the default value. So when I hit insert into, it runs, and now when I select that employee, it has a Mr. in front of it, even though I never specified that. Okay, it's kind of assuming a default value. Now, of course, with the default keyword, I can overwrite that. If I don't want the first value to be the default, I want, for whatever reason, Mrs. to be the default. Let me go ahead and drop and rerun again. Here we go. Now, right here, when I run this, it will go ahead and assume that default value of Mrs. So now it becomes Mrs. Jennifer Casey at that point. So just be aware, if it's a not null field and you don't specify a default, well, it will assume one with the first value out of the enum. Now, having showed you this enum data type, I will mention that if you were to Google mySQL and enum, there are several articles out there that kind of mention it's actually probably not the best way to do things. It might be better to create a separate table for those titles and then do a join on that table. I will put a link to this article at the bottom or in the description of my video, but he has a lot of good points to be made that enum may not be the best way to go. A lot of times you want to have a drop-down list showing the potential values. Well, if it's buried inside an enum, you can't get it inside a list, and he has 8 different reasons here. So just be aware. I wanted you to know that it is an option and how it's used, but there's some who would argue that it's not the best design of a database, and it may be better to create a separate table holding these values. So I think that about covers on create table. We've done everything from the primary key, auto increment, all the not null, the default values, the unique constraint. We talked a little bit about some functions, built-in functions. And for 90% of what you do in creating a table, those are the things that you're going to use.